Hello， 大家好，欢迎来到我的打工仔买楼的频道。在上一集里面，我为你介绍了关于 KLCC 那边的发展计划，而今天我会为你讲解呢，就是 Tun Razak Exchange TRX 这个 Financial District 这个金融中心。OK， 而现在我的背后那边就是我讲的这个 Tun Razak Exchange 的这个金融中心。而在这个 Tun Razak Exchange 在这一边呢，其中一个卖点就是它会有2个 MRT 站，也就是 MRT Line 1和 MRT Line 2。好吧，今天我就会带你们去做 MRT。我们今天直接去到这个 Tun Razak Exchange 的这个 MRT 站，我们会为你呢直接分享关于这个 Tun Razak Exchange 的这整个大蓝图和这个未来的整个发展的计划。这样整个 TRX 呢是70个 acre。这样如果我们现在来看到整个 Master Plan 的话，它里面呢第一个就是这个 Signature Tower。So 这个 Signature Tower 呢是总共106层，也就是现在已经是起好了。你们在背后看到的这个蓝色的这整个 building，OK，So 它106层，我们的 estimation 的那个 work population 呢是15000，也就是讲说，只是单单的这一座这个东西呢就有15000个人会在这边工作。它总共的 office floor 呢是总共是34000个 square feet， 里面的 facility 呢它还包括着有一个 retail 的 podium， 有2个 sky bar， 还有另外一个 sky lobby。除了这个 Exchange 106之外呢，它的附近其实也是围绕着有许多的 Grade A 的 office。OK， 这个 Grade Office 现在呢，如果你看到的话，Affin Bank 跟 HSBC Bank 呢已经是在起着，然后它的另外一 side 在Jalan Impian 的 overnight side 呢 ，Prudential 已经是起好了。现在人呢已经有很多人已经在里面工作了。这样如果你再看整个大环境的话，它除了有 office 之外，它还有另外一个 shopping mall， 这个 shopping mall 呢，我们叫做 The Exchange Shopping Mall。这个 The Exchange Shopping Mall 呢是有2个 million square feet， 然后呢里面其实它比 Pavilion Mall 还更加的大。这个 The Exchange Shopping Mall 里面呢，它会有那种高等的 restaurant，high end 的 restaurant， 然后它还会有一个 high end 的那种 retail， 大多数的那种名牌都会来到这一边，然后它还会有一个 market lane。这个 market lane 呢，其实就是给那些 entrepreneurs， 他们会好像有一条街是给那些 entrepreneurs 在那边做一点小生意，这种摆那种小档口。世界一个出名的一个hotel chain 叫做 IHC， 它也会在这一边 set up 马来西亚的第一个 branding 叫做 Kingdom Branding 的一个 hotel。它也会在这个 Tun Razak Exchange 的这个 shopping mall 这边起这个 hotel。整个 Tun Razak Exchange mall 最厉害的地方呢，就是它在这个 mall 的上面这边将会有一个很大的公园。这个公园呢，我们叫做 Elevated Park， 它就是起在这个 shopping mall 的上面，总面积是10个 acre。所以总结来讲说，这整个 Master Plan 里面呢，它会有一个 Signature Tower， 有 Grade A 的 Office Tower， 然后有一个 shopping mall， 然后 shopping mall 上面那边还有一个很大的公园。这个就是整个 TRX 的那 Master Plan。这样来讲的话 ，Tun Razak Exchange Connectivity 是非常的重要。所以今天，如果你有来过吉隆坡的话，全部的人都会懂说，Jalan Tun Razak 就是整个 KL 里面最塞车的一个地方。这样 Tun Razak Exchange 呢，它就是位于这个 Jalan Tun Razak 的尾端，而这一边就有这个 Roundabout，OK，Roundabout Kampong Pandan。这个呢也是连接着另外一条 KL 最塞车，就是 Jalan Sultan Ismail 通往 Bukit Bintang 的地方。这样从这2边你就会懂讲说，这2条是整个 KL 里面最塞车的地方。所以在整个 Master Plan 里面，政府也在 upgrade 这整条 Jalan Tun Razak。在整个 Jalan Tun Razak 那边，从那个 Prince Court Highway all the way 来到这个 Jalan Tun Razak， 还有这个 Roundabout， 这边政府都是花了很多的时间和金钱在这边 upgrade 这整条马路。所以总结来讲说，从 connectivity 来讲，这边交通非常方便，因为它连接着2条最塞车的马路 ，Jalan Tun Razak 和 Jalan Sultan Ismail， 然后它也连接着3个 highway， 第一个就是现在已经在起色的 Setiawangsa Expressway， 然后第2个呢就是 Max Highway， 还有第3就是那个 Smart Tunnel。这3条 highway 都会直接连接着这个 Tun Razak Exchange， 所以这个就是 from a 加车的 connectivity 来讲说，这个有5条大马路会连接着这个 Tun Razak Exchange。然后从 MRT 的角度来讲，这一边会有2个 MRT 站 ，MRT Line 1跟 MRT Line 2。MRT Line 1它是连接着 Merdeka 站，也就是 PMP 118，Bukit Bintang Station 也就是 Pavilion、Laoyak 和这个Sungai Wang Plaza 这些 shopping 的地方。然后 Tun Razak Exchange 这一边，然后它也会接到去 IKEA 跟 Sunway Velocity。 而 MRT 赖度呢，这个就是重点之一。这个 MRT 赖度它会直接连接到去班达马来西亚。如果你想了解更加多关于班达马来西亚的，欢迎你留意我过后的 video， 我会为你讲解更多关于这个班达马来西亚的。这样我们现在来看回这个 Tun Razak Exchange 这一边呢，这边有两个的 residence， 一个是 Tun Razak Exchange， 另外一个呢就是 Core Residence， 这两个就是现在在 Tun Razak Exchange 这边的 residential development。我个人觉得讲说这两个 development 呢，就好像一个拥有着 Rolex 手表一样，因为这个 Tun Razak Exchange， 你在这个这么 premium 的 address， 你拥有着这个这么 premium 的 residential unit。所以，如果你想了解更加多关于这两个 project 的分别，你可以点击以下这个 link， 我们会有专员来跟你联系，跟你分享更加多。总结来讲说，如果你有留意过我上次我讲关于 KLCC， 为什么 KLCC 会这么成功？因为它有 landmark building， 有 Grade A office， 有 shopping mall， 有这个 park。然后今天你看回整个 Tun Razak Exchange 的 master plan， 它是整个 master plan 里面，它就好像 KLCC 这样，它有 Tun Exchange 的这个 signature tower， 它有 The Exchange shopping mall， 然后 mall 的上面呢，它有一个很大的公园，然后四周围也有许多的 Grade A office， 这些都造就了 minimum 有一个45,000的一个 job population。这样就好像我自己讲说，当有人工作的话，就会有那个居住的需求，有居住的需求的话，这样你买这一带的这一边的房地产，这样你才会增值。今天呢，我的分享呢就到此为止。欢迎你 subscribe 我的频道，我会这样为你分享更加多在投资吉隆坡这一边的这个投资的发展计划。这样，如果你想投资在吉隆坡，但是你又不懂要如何投资的话，现在下面这边有一个 link， 我欢迎你点击这个 link 呢，这样你可以跟我来一个 one-to-one 的 discussion， 我会为你分享更加多关于投资在这个 Tun Razak Exchange 的这个 development。OK， 好，我们下一集再见。
OK， 好。Good evening, everyone. So, okay. Good evening, everyone. If you can hear my voice clearly and you can see my screen clearly, can you please give me a 1? Can you please give me a 1 in the chat box that if you can see my screen clearly? And you can hear my voice clearly as well. Okay, thank you very much. Good evening. Yang Hao, Jetan, Li Shin, Edward, Ang. Okay, Eunice, Wilbert. Okay, good evening, everyone. Okay, without further ado, let me start our tonight event here. So for tonight, we are going to have a very interesting topic. Okay, we talk about IHC, which is the Investment Holding Company. Okay, and I'm very proud to tell everyone tonight here, tonight is only the beginning of you to be a advanced property investor, because actually this topic, investment holding company, right, is a very advanced topic. If for those people that I'm sure that today in this participant, I think among the list, right, a lot of you actually did ever spend few thousand, even include myself, go attend a lot of property guru classes to learn about this kind of the advanced technique in IHC. Okay, but tonight our speaker, Mr. Chee, is going to give you for free. Okay, and he's not like going to do like those like what preview section, you know, like give you the part 1, then after that to ask you to pay money to attend part 2. No, today, although it's part 1, but because the section is going to be very detailed, it's very technical oriented. Tonight we talk about the theory first. Okay, we're going to talk about the calculation, benefit, drawbacks, a little bit on the theory. So tonight we cover the part 1, and for part 2, okay, we are going to cover, we will set up another date. Okay, we'll set up another date. Then we'll cover the part 2 in the another section. And in our part 2 section, we are going to talk, even emphasize more on the tax. Okay, we'll go and like into even a more advanced module to tell you that how you can save money, okay, using the IHC. But of course, if you are using in the right way, I can guarantee to tell you, let's say I take myself as an example, I'm being myself owning like more than like 13 properties as of today now, I haven't used IHC to invest in any other property. The reason being is that like, I know IHC is not that straightforward. It really depends on the type of property that you are buying and your long-term investment strategy. So that's why tonight we are very proud. We are very proud and we are very glad to invite Mr. Chee, okay, to give us this sharing. So little bit introduction to myself. My name is Wai Kit. I full-time, I'm an engineer, and part-time wise, I'm a property agent consultant. I advise my client how to choose a grade A property. I filter all the properties, do a lot of analysis. So that's why if you are interested to go and learn, go and check about what are my previous analysis, you can go to my Facebook page, Property Lab. Okay, this one actually is my Facebook page. Okay, you can come to here to go and see through my previous videos. Okay. So tonight, Mr. Chee, let me spend 5 minutes. Okay, let me spend 5 minutes to talk about Mr. Chee. Mr. Chee actually, he's the founder for this YLC Tax Service and Jan Berhas, YC and Co. He is one of the top Malaysia branded company, like full with the chartered accountants. Okay, and you can go to their website. If later on, you can go and check on the YLC. I think you can go and find his website. So Mr. Chee provide a lot of services, and all these services are all the professional services like the audit, like special audit, statutory audit, right? The accounting report, and of course, right? You can see based on this background, he is definitely one of the best candidate to tell you that like how to set up the IHC, why I need to set up the IHC. Okay, so as of today now, I think like Mr. Chee company has he has more than 1,700 projects, 12 years experience in the industry, have more than 200 clients, right? I'm sure that like tonight discussion, okay, it's going to be a very interesting session. We are inviting one of the specialists, not property guru, we are inviting the tax specialist, the audit specialist to tell you the right facts, okay? So without further ado, now I will pass the floor to Mr. Chee. Mr. Chee, hi, good evening, Mr. Chee.
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much, Wai Kit, for putting me so high. Anyway, I'll try my best to give you some information about what you need to know about IHC tonight. Before I go into that, I'd like to see whether my staff is also here or not. Mr. Tan, are you here? My manager. I didn't pass him the link there. Never mind. I think you will see him later. And then Miss Vivian, are you here also? Okay. Well, before I begin, the last session we have been talking about rental income, where you have this deduction against the income of the expenses. And there are some queries that came out from the chat, which I just gone through the day. And among the queries, I just want to clear some of the queries that have been asked since the last session that we had. One of the questions they asked is, could you give a summary on pros and cons on individual or company versus company in property investment? Yeah, this one, I'm going to do it tonight. Some of the things about this. And if you share property with husband and wife and only one person reports, is it right? I say it's not right, because if the property is mentioned in two names, means the title deed having two names to it, the income should be reported equally by two. Or if there's an agreement to share in the proportion, then you have to follow the agreement in proportion to what is stated in the agreement. So I hope those who have done it wrongly, well, you have a choice to do two things. One is you go and amend the past, or you don't talk about the past, moving forward, do it right. Hopefully they don't check on you in the future. Okay, and also one question about a person renting out 3 rooms, and out of the 3 rooms, only 2 rooms were rented out. How do you calculate the quick rent and assessment? Something like this. So with that, if you go by room basis, because it's only 1 unit and you have broken up into a few rooms to rent out, you can sort of charge off expenses over the 2 rooms that have been rented out. So not an issue about the apportionment in this aspect. And also, if the assessment is under a previous owner's name, can you get deduction from it? This is a question of documentation. As far as income tax concerned, is they need to see the documents in your name if you are the owner of the property. But because of the fact that you have not changed the assessment or the quick rent at the moment, actually with the SMP that you have, you can show it to them if they ask you for proof that you're in the midst of changing the name and it took some time for you to change. As such, you are in the cross border between these two areas, you can get deduction by showing proof that you have done all this, that you are the owner of the building before the change of name. So it's okay, you can deduct that against your income. And also, it's the same question here. Now, rental deposit is an income. This is an interesting part. Over the years, all the rental deposit is never taken as income. But recently, with the change of law, if the rental deposit is refundable, then it should not be an income. But if the rental deposit is not refundable, then it becomes an income when you receive it. And in relation to this, the same thing happens when you receive your rental in advance. There are people who receive 1 year's rental in advance. The law says that if you receive it in advance, the total amount will be taxable in the year that you receive it. So you have to bear in mind that your rental is not only 1 month, but it's the year that you receive the money. So assuming you rent the property in the month of December, and you receive the rental for the month of December plus 11 months of the next year, in the year that you receive it, you have to report the tax for that year as 1 year's income. But in the previous and the following year, you will not have rental income, but you have expenses. So you have to do adjustments to the current year income tax for every year that you have this adjustment to be made. If you are getting a 3-year rental income in advance, you're going to adjust it 3 years for 3 times of the expenses that you incur for the next 2 years or 3 years against the current year income that you receive. So this is the technical part, which I think if you're not very sure of this, the best is to get your tax agent or your accountant to help you to do this. So bear in mind that this is one area which I think you have to make note of. Otherwise, you'll be short. You have been paying short of tax because of the fact that you did not pick up the income in the year. All right, and other areas of it, there are quite a number of questions which have been asked here, but I think some of them I already answered before. There's one part here about renovation. Can you deduct renovation against your income? Because you're under section 4D. 4D means just purely investment income and not a business income. As such, you can't have any deduction against renovation. If you are buying brand new, I mean, a second resale property, and you sort of, after buying it, you renovate it, that becomes an enhancement to the value of the property. So when you go for RPHT in the future, it will be added to the value of the property when you bought it at the time against your RPHT. So you can have deduction against RPHT, but not against income tax. So it will not allow you to deduct against income tax against your rental income for renovation. I hope that will clear the point. But if you have other questions, you can still text it in the chat. And I hope in the next session, when I come back again for a more detailed explanation of IHC, I will touch on it as well. And another question is that would it be better benefit if I put my properties under my company's name rather than my personal name? This I will touch on it tonight. How about painting of the unit? Painting of the unit depends on the arrangement. If you just done it once every 10 years, it becomes a sort of repairs and maintenance value, then you can deduct against the expense. But if you are renovating the whole thing and repainting it, that is not considered as repairs to the building. Okay, so should not allow to deduct if it's a renovation part of it. Okay, there's a lot more here. How about weekly cleaning fee? Can you sort of deduct? Sure. As long as it's related to your property and you have tenants there and it's part and parcel of your duty to clean up the place, which is in your tenancy agreement, you can deduct the expense. Okay, and then similarly, your Wi-Fi, if it's in the tenancy agreement, you can deduct against the income, as an expense. And fees paid to agent for management of property, like rental collection. Okay, rental collection, if really you have a lot of properties and you engage somebody to, like a property agent to manage for you, as long as the tenancy, you have the agreement and the invoice is there, you can deduct against your income. This is something which you engage people to do the work for you, right? As long as it's something that's related to your business, because the nature of this deduction is that whatever is wholly and exclusively incurred in production of income, you can offset against the income. That's the word they use in the income tax technical term to use. Okay, thank you very much. And I will just tonight's session will be quite short, not that heavy. So I'll be just giving you an outline of what is been done tonight on this IHC. Yeah. Well, investment holding company is a term that we use nowadays when you're using a company to buy a property. So for you, it's necessary to think about this point when you come to a stage whereby you are planning to do an investment, especially when you're young. This is the best session. Just as a prelude to it, I myself used 2 companies to buy properties over the years. Initially, I used my personal name to buy, but I came to a point whereby I said that it's good to have an investment holding company to do it. That's where I started using that. Okay, now let's go back to session 1, and the next time I'll come back again for session 2. I'll give you an overview of what the whole thing is about. So like this, section 2 come in will be on income tax purpose, income tax on the investment that you have. Here is just purely the preview of it, of investment holding company. Okay, the simple definition. The name itself already mentioned that it's an investment holding. So it's a company that you have incorporated or you bought a shelf company to hold investments. I will go into more detail about investments later on. And you can have a Senam Berhad or public company Berhad. And now they have come up with LLP. You don't normally use the sole proprietorship or partnership to hold property because those are not legal entities. Whereas the Senam Berhad or private limited company or public company is the legal entity, or even a LLP as a legal entity to hold the property. So I do not advise people to use the Senam Berhad, to use the sole proprietorship or partnership to hold properties. Your company is a private limited company or a public company, can be listed or non-listed. For public company, for a public company, it can be listed or non-listed, which I think if you have bought shares in the stock market, these are all listed companies, which are very big already. As I said earlier, the company which you form is the legal entity. This legal entity is a very big word, but it's a very powerful word. In other words, when you form this Senam Berhad to hold property, which you call it investment holding company, it has the right as a human being. You can take action against any party, like human being taking action. So even you, as a company director of this company that you have held, and as a shareholder, you hold 2 different positions. As a shareholder, you own the shares in the company. And as a director, you've been appointed by the company to run the show. So there are these 2 different positions that you hold. They work differently. And in most cases, you can see newspaper, anything that's wrongly been done on the company, they charge the directors, not so much of shareholders. So a lot of companies that you own, you can be a shareholder, but may not be a director. So the risk is less on you. Because as a director, you hold a huge responsibility of maintaining and taking care of the company that you own. So there's one thing which you have to bear in mind. I think that, for this aspect of whether about this company, I think we'll talk in another session in the future about the liabilities as a director and as a shareholder. The next question I ask is, why do you need a this investment holding company, IHC, in your portfolio or in your planning? The very key point that we have to have in mind is what is the end result? Why do you want to invest in properties? Are you investing it for certain strategy or certain objective in mind? So that has to be very clear in your mind before you go into investment holding company as a vehicle for you to do your investment. One of the points about end in mind is that you must always consider these investments as long-term. If you are intending to buy one property and to flip it or to sell it within the next 6 months or 1 year, you can use a personal name to buy. You can also use a holding company to buy, this investment IHC to buy as well. Either one you can do. Right? But then if just only buying one property for short term, then it's not worth to use the IHC, because there's a cost incurred in holding this IHC. As you know that, and you have a company, you need a company secretary to manage your secretarial records, because there are a lot of laws to maintain, to comply with. Under the company's law, you need a company secretary to help you to comply with the law. It may be a bit complicated, but because of the fact that the secretarial fees are very low in Malaysia as compared to other countries, that's where you don't need to worry much about that, because they also give you advice along the way. So it's a very good, very cheap means of having company secretary to give you advice on a lot of things that you may not know, especially relating to company law. So this investment, in the first place, it must be long-term. Then it's worthwhile to have an investment holding company. And also you have a mindset. Your mindset to be like tycoons of the past, and you be tycoon of the future. Because that mindset is very important in the sense that if you do not understand what you're doing with what the properties you have, you may be buying 1 or 2 and that's it. Then you are limiting your potential, because you are young, especially for those who are young. You have a great potential in front of you. So investment in property is one of the key points, and whereby property value in most cases will be on the uptrend. No doubt there are times of turbulences like now, where the market has down a bit, but in over long term, it's always an upward curve, whereby up, down, but it's even average out, it will be on the upward curve, because land especially is a scarce commodity. You only have so much of land. As such, the value will always on the way up, and the population grows bigger and bigger. The demand and supply comes in, whereby the demand will be greater than supply. Definitely, you will increase in value. So it's always think long term, think like those tycoons with a future in mind as to what you want it to be. And having an IHC is one of the ways to leave a family legacy with peace. The key point here is peace. We'll talk about this later, more about this, why there's a need to have this as we go along, because leaving a legacy is very good. But just a preview, I mean, just short part of it is that imagine you're having a property and something happened to the person who has a property, and like this, my client just yesterday I received a call. He got a lot of properties, a lot of land. He just passed away because of COVID yesterday. And now they're thinking about what is the event, what is happening in the future. Because the properties need to be transferred out. It will cost a lot of legal fees to transfer the thing out, the properties out. Cost a lot of time. These are some of the things where you cut short some of these things through your IHC. We're going to talk more about this later in the future and the nights. So what you have to do is tonight, your decision making. After you have gone through this session that we've gone through with me, I hope you can go back and think about the future. You may be 20 plus years old, 30, 40, 50, 60, even 70. You're still thinking about the future, because lifespan has been extended all the way. It can come out to 100 already. So there's something which you think about it. Decision making is from now. And what you have learned tonight, you can gather with your friends together and brainstorm a bit and chart your progress from there. And the future is always bright. It's all in your hands. Okay, so far, I hope you all can hear me. Is it loud? Is it clear?
Yes, very clear, Mr. Chee.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, now I'm going to some of the uses of IHC. When you form a company called IHC, Investment Holding Company, most of us, I would say 90% of us will use it to hold properties. If you have just one house, you can use it to hold your house. And if you intend to stay for long term, you can use IHC to hold the house. Maybe your house is worth 10 million. Is it good to hold your personal name? You have a choice. But my advice is use the IHC to hold it. Okay, but you have more than one properties, and I told you just now about the decision making. You decide to go on long term, then it's good to hold the properties in IHC. Other than that, you can use the same company to hold shares. You're buying shares in the stock market, and you're buying for long term keep. For example, you buy Tenaga shares for long term keep, or Maybank, or even Top Growth. It's meant for long term. You can use the IHC to buy the shares and keep it there, because it's an investment that you have. So this investment holding company can hold shares as well. This is an example of how even the listed company use investment holding company to hold shares in all these companies. I mean, this is an example. This Berjaya Corporation holds in other listed companies as well, like Berjaya Land, Berjaya Food, Causeway. So these are all, it's a form of investment holding company where Berjaya Corp is up there, and Berjaya Land itself also investment holding company in the form that you hold shares in Berjaya Total. So this is one of the areas that you can look at if you've got a long term, including your business. If you are having your own business, you can use this investment holding company to hold your shares in your own business that you have. So it's never a loss to you, but it will be a good arrangement for you if you look at it properly in the right lights of it. In addition to that, you can also use the investment holding company to do other things. Like for example, you can hold paintings. Well, if you have a art-minded person, and you want to have art that will last you for long and keep it there, when you hold these assets for long term, if, for example, you bought it for 10 million, and in the future you will sell it after 20 years, 30 years at 30 million, the profit you make, because of the fact that it's an IHC, it may not be taxable on you. So as such, it may be a good idea that you can buy some of these paintings to hold under this company. In addition, you have all those things like a vase, which also has value. These are the things that you can buy to keep for long term. There is a value to it. Vintage cars, also one form of it, where you can buy where there's a precision value, and the IHC can hold it. So what I'm going to say is that some of these things which are valuable, you buy. After that, you can sell in the future after some time. They will not be taxed on the profit you make, because of the fact that this investment holding. If you're trading in vintage car, you buy and sell today, and buy today and sell tomorrow, then it becomes trading. There will be under income tax. Whereas under investment, you buy for long term, it will not be taxable on you. So that's a good point for you. Wine, for those who are connoisseurs, you can keep that as well. Trademarks, these are a very powerful thing about trademarks. A lot of people, they don't understand that trademarks has value. For example, IBM or even Adidas. They may not have a factory, for example, Adidas, but they have the brand. They can brand the brand, so-called, to other people. They can get income out of the brand that they have. And it's where you can use the IHC to hold the brand. Instead of the company that is manufacturing it, you can have another company to hold it, so you can sell the brand in the future for some value. Well, as an IHC, if you have other companies in your group, you can give loans to them. At the same time, you can get back money in the form of interest. So this interest is also one form of income to IHC. So these are all the uses that you have for IHC as you go along. But there will be other uses which you can do it. But as I mean, for this discussion, I just give some examples of it. Now, why do you use IHC? One, because if you just employee and you're coming out, it's good to have a brand name for yourself. So you can build up a brand name from young and from now until the future, because brand is created over time. A lot of these brands are created over time. So if you have a branded name and you create the brand over time, you may have a value, and that's fair. As I said earlier just now, the trademark is there. So you have the name cards to show that you are a professional now as an investor, and with the websites to yourself. Which Kit is doing that now. I think Wai Kit is doing that very well. So I think you should follow his style. Property investment is one of the key points. Most of us want to use IHC, so that's where you can start having your focus on properties as the first choice. Then from there you branch out into other avenues, like investing in other shares and other companies. There are a lot of startups coming up. You imagine that you have a startup, they come out, and in years to come, they worth like Grab, worth billions of ringgit. That's something which you can look at. So one of the points is that you can use it as a brand image building for yourself. Managing finance. Imagine when you use your personal name to buy properties, right? Like Wai Kit has more than, I don't know, maybe more than 10 properties, right? In terms of units. I'm not sure how many units you have, but I know it's more, a lot more. But if you use your, have a company, there's a need for companies to be audited, accounts to be audited. As such, you sure get an accountant to prepare for you. So it's easy when it comes to income tax investigation or fee audit on the person like Wai Kit or on the company. It's easier for a company to show proof because these accounts are all prepared in order. And at the same time, they can produce the results quite easily because it's all in the software. As compared to individual. Individual, we are more lax, especially those days when I was buying properties under my personal name. I missed out my fire insurance, this sort of thing, because while you're busy with booking, doing my own business, whereas the investment side, we are not putting effort. So when I form my own IHC, I put it all under the company, and now I'm still transferring some of my own properties into the company. I have my accounts girl to arrange for me the accounts. At least it's much proper order. So it's good to have the accounts prepared. Anyway, by the tax law, everybody must prepare accounts to show the income tax about your profit or loss. And either you use your own staff to do it, as in my case, I have my own staff to do it, or you outsource to us. We are also having staff who are doing outsourced accounts for other people. You have this software to do that for them, as well as the assets and liabilities tracking. Because when it comes to bankers' side, you want to see how much assets you have and how much liabilities you have. So it's easy for them to track from this IHC after the accounts are prepared. And it's much faster and more efficient for you to prepare and give the bankers than the individual. Similarly, for collection and expenses updates, it's up to date, whereby your staff or the outsourced person can update for you on the spot or every week, depending on your requirements, on a monthly basis. And now some of these softwares are in cloud. You can even check your own self after the person has done it for you. You just look at the results, what they have done. So you can see your own results and see your own comparison as to which property is making profit and which property is making losses. As we have gone through last session, we have gone through all the list of expenses. From there, you will know which property is making profit or which property is making loss. And some of the expenses that you didn't even know are causing you a loss to the property. So that's where you do something about it. And this is where the managing of finance is much easier if you use the IHC for somebody to handle for you. One important point why I use IHC myself is that I'm going to segregate my personal assets from my business. I buy properties for investment, this is my personal. Whereas business, I may be bringing partners inside. So it's good that business will have a different set of accounts in my personal side. So my personal side, I use my IHC to hold my family property. I call it my family investment holding company. And home office is common nowadays. That most of rich and affluent people, they use home office, and IHC is a home office to do it. And firstly, the risk will not affect the investments. So-called, if you are sufficiently wealthy, you can control your investments under your IHC. Your business is your business. Business, there'll be times of up and down. So the risks are much higher on business. So if you put your property into a business, your company, as when you're doing business, if something happens to your business, it should affect your property. So I always advise my clients, if you're a factory, you have a company to hold the land and the factory building, and you rent it to your own business, which is another company which is doing manufacturing. In a lot of times when they come to me, they have already bought the building under the business. So it's difficult to divest it out of the company that's doing business or doing manufacturing with the property inside, with the factory inside. But effective now, just 2 days ago, one lady called me. They're buying a property of about 5 million. So I advise them, it's good to segregate these two. And they said, nobody advised them, no accountants advised them. I told them, based on my history, I always see it's beneficial for them. So they're taking their advice, and for long-term basis, they're doing that. So it's one of the way to protect your risk on your properties. And also, especially when you're admitting new partners, you have your investment property in the same business, it will be difficult because they will pay a higher value to buy your shares. Otherwise, they don't like to buy your shares with the property inside. So it's always easier when you want to admit new partners, especially, or when you split the partnership, it's so easier to calculate the value of the business. And also selling your properties and the business, if you intend to retire, want to sell your business away, if you sell together with the business, people say, wow, value is so high, they may bargain with you. But if you show it separately, in fact, you can get a higher value by selling a business and the property separately. So it's one of the benefits of having this IHC for you to use. Okay, so far I hope if there's any question, you can ask me through a chat later on. And tonight is purely just information based about IHC. I'm coming back to you about the tax aspect of it in the next session. Going to have coming soon. And another part, this is a very crucial part. I had a client who has been investigated because he got all properties under his personal name. And it took us a long time to do a capital statement or statement of affairs for him to determine when the properties were purchased and how the money been spent for a long time. If he had put it into a company, it will be solved much easier and faster, and he doesn't need to crack his head and have sleepless nights how to answer, because it took years to determine the figures. So my advice is, if you are still young, it's good to go into IHC and use IHC as a means to hold your family investment holding company. I always call it a family investment company because it's always a family affair from there on. So this is one of the crucial reasons why you need to do it. You may be a cost incurred on having IHC. For example, you have this secretarial fee, which depending on the size, you can ranging from 100 ringgit per month. And then you have tax. I mean, tax is something which you have to do. You can have the tax agent to do for you. Auditing has to be done because the fact that it's by law, the accounts need to be audited. Other than that, it's all you have to incur. But this cost is not that much as compared to the cost and sleepless nights if you're under tax investigation, which is time you need to spend to determine how to come up with a statement of affairs of the company, of your personnel. So it's always a good idea to do that. Okay, I'm going to wrap up soon, just to help you to do this. Okay, tax planning. If your personal income is very, very high, it can reach up to 30%. Is it worth to put your extra money, extra rental income under personal name? Or is it worth to put under corporate between 17 to 24%? In most of your cases, you're under Section 4D, your income tax is 24%. All right, whereas Section 4A, with the next session, I'll be talking about Section 4A income. For this session, I think just skip it for a while first until next session. So if your income tax is in a high bracket, logically speaking, it is worth to do some tax planning on that. And using IHC is one form to divert it out into a corporate, into IHC to reduce your tax. There's something which you have to think about it. in the coming weeks. One of the use of IHC also, we have also clients having this direct sales, unit trust agent, insurance agent. If the agency or the insurance company or unit trust company or direct sales agent companies allow you to form a company to hold the so-called membership or agency, then you use the IHC to hold it. Here's why. The money is perpetual in the form of, for example, my client is the double diamond with MA. The money is perpetual. So MA asked them to form a company. So you form this IHC to hold the agency with as an agent with MA. Then all the money will go back into this company. If anything happened to them personally, the money can still go on and on and on for the generation to come. So this is one of the use of IHC, which even big corporations like MA and a lot of unit trust companies also, they ask their top agencies to form Senambahat or form IHC. So it will be a perpetual income to the family and the future children. So it's one of the use of IHC as well. And there's the advantage for you as an investor to hold IHC in the sense that you may want to keep the records outside the purview of others, because every year after the accounts have been audited, the company secretary will have to file the accounts with SSM or Companies Commission of Malaysia, CCM in English. So once they file, people can see your results, how much you make and how much you have expense of. But there's the law here whereby if you are a private exempt company, you need not file the accounts. You only file a statement. So when people do a search on your company, they can't see the results that you have, how much property you have, how much income you have, they can't see. And this is a special privilege given to private exempt company. So if your company at the moment is a private exempt company and you have been filing accounts, which your competitor can see the results of your company, it's about time you ask your secretary to change it. And these are the conditions to it. To be a private exempt company, you don't have a corporate shareholder inside. Just now the example that I showed earlier, whereby we have this Vijaya, is a corporate, and below that is a corporate. So they are corporate, holding corporate. So they are not private exempt company. Whereas you as an individual, you can form a IHC as one shareholder and one director company. This is a new law that we have, which is very beneficial to you all, especially those who are worried about having husband and wife being guarantors of the loans. So only one person be a guarantor of the loan. There's only one shareholder and one director. So that's where, in this case, as a private exempt company, there's no corporate shareholder, but individual shareholder. And must not more than 20 shareholders. We do come across quite a number of insurance people. They form together and come together to buy properties. And 3 years ago, 4 years ago, property boom. Many of these, they form companies to buy. And they have a lot of shareholders inside because they share the property investment. And if it's less than 20 shareholders, it's still okay. You can still go on private exempt company. It just file in the private exempt certificate. We call it under the term, it's called private exempt certificate. As such, you don't have to show the results of the company. They do not know how many properties you bought or how big in terms of investments you have in the company. So if you are having your own business, talk to the secretary about this private exempt company. Okay, coming to a point about transfer of assets and versus transfer of shares. Now, why do I form IHC? If you have been buying properties, a person has been buying properties, my client who just passed away, here's his properties on his personal name. Now, they have a hard time trying to look at all the documents to get a lawyer to do the transfer. And each transfer of property, you know, it takes time. This whole property takes longer time than freehold property. And all this is always the issue of timing. Whereas if you have shares, we have company IHC, which holds the land, you just need to transfer shares. If he has pre-signed the transfer form, today he passed away, tomorrow or yesterday they will have transferred a share out. In a sense, so it'll be so much faster and cheaper You don't have to get a lawyer to do the transfer. So it saves a lot of bigger fees and stamp duty as well. When you transfer the assets, the stamp duty on the transfer will be quite costly. Right? If it's transferred to other people, you have an issue of arbitrary as well. So one of the use of IHC is that if you have 30, 40 properties on hand in your personal name, imagine if something happened, the next of kin will have a hard time and have come up with a lot of money to transfer the assets into their name. So this is one of the good points for you. I'm not talking about tax angle of it, but I'm looking at the practicability of having this investment holding company. It's one of a portfolio, one of a strategy, your investment that you have. Okay, as I said, it takes a long time, and transfer shares is much easier. So when you want to leave a legacy, that's what I mean by living a legacy with peace. That's how it should be, that the children or next of kin will not have to quarrel over this sort of thing, because the shares have been transferred in respective. If you have a will, they can use the will to transfer shares as well. So it's not a big issue. The good point about this IHC is that if something happened to a person who owns the property, the whole thing is jammed up because he can't sign the documents, can't do anything because the person is no more here. If his property is under his personal name. But if the assets under IHC, the company can still run because the directors can change immediately. The shareholders are there but pass away. They can do the transfer of share later on or immediately, but the company can still run. So the company, IHC, is a legal entity which controls the land, all the properties, all the shares, and can still move on because the directors can come and go. The directors can be appointed now or can be appointed later. And if there are 2 or 3 directors, one of them has passed away, the rest of them can still continue on. So these are the good points about having IHC in your investment strategy. Okay, I've come to the end of it. I'm supposed to have a breakout discussion for you all, but somehow I think we have to look at this breakout in the future as to how you all can discuss among yourselves what you have learned tonight about IHC. Okay, thank you very much, and I will come out from here now, and I will leave it to Mr. Wai Kit.
Yep, thanks, Mr. Chee. Okay, so I think there are a few questions actually in my mind. Yeah, okay, from a property investor standpoint, actually, I do have a few questions. Actually, I also want to ask Mr. Chee, right, just to clarify some of my thought process. Okay, so I will share my screen now. So, okay, this is just my personal thought. Okay, my personal thought about the IHC. Okay, so my first question, okay, I know that normally today we are using the IHC. Actually, it's something like a Sendirian Berhad, right? It's a commercial company, and I know that actually normally like for advanced investor, like even like myself, right? I think maybe one day in future I also will do that because it's that today I'm no longer have 90% quota anymore. Okay, so one of the way that normally we think as an investor, we think that it's like, can we use this IHC for channeling? Okay, what does it mean by channeling? Okay, so my point here is that, for example, today I believe that a lot of the investors in this group right now, they don't have any more than 90% quota. Okay, they are just like me. Okay, but they want to recover back this 90% quota. So they need to find a place, because like there are 2 ways, right? I think it's like if today you order, let's say you buy a property, okay, you buy a property at 300,000, okay, and let's say like after 5 years, 10 years, it capital appreciate to 500,000. So now I refinance this thing to IHC with 60% loan margin, because one of the biggest drawback for IHC is that like if you are using a company to buy a residential property, right, you only can get 60% loan margin. So in this case, even 60%, I refinance it, right? Then in this case, now you are converting, you are channeling your 90% quota, means you are channeling your loan from your personal 90% quota to your company. Then in this case, now you recover back your 90% quota. So in this case, this is one of the way that like a lot of investors are doing. Okay, but in my personal view, right? There are pros and cons at here. So maybe my first question to Mr. Chee is like, how do you see this methodology, Mr. Chee? Because I know that like one of my biggest concern actually is that like there is a minimum fee per year, because it's like you are forming a Sendirian Berhad, you're forming a company, right? Every year you have to pay the secretary fee, things like that. So in my opinion, it might not be applicable to a lot of investors. Okay, if you are thinking that to form an IHC to buy a residential property, then I think you are in the wrong way. If let's say this is your first or second property, because it's like by default, right, you can get 90% loan quota. But now you are using the company, okay, then you go and take 60% loan, then you need to fork out a lot of cash, right? And to manage to operate this company for every, you have to spend like 3,000 to 4,000 for the secretary fee. So this is my personal thought, Mr. Chee. What do you think about these things?
Well, if you use monthly basis to compare with the benefits that I mentioned earlier,
yep,
then we are barking on the wrong tree in the sense that, because you get this point, the cost incurred to have a company, to maintain a company, ranges from 5 maybe to 2,000 ringgit a year. 5,000 ringgit to legal secretarial fee plus audit fee plus tax fee, about 5,000 ringgit, plus or minus 5,000 ringgit a year. Okay, but what's the benefit to you? Why do you have IHC, as I said earlier? Okay, why do you have that? Because the fact that you want the hassle-free kind of arrangement in the future, if ever things happen. That's one thing. So I think the cost saving is the transfer of property, which costs you much more than 5,000 per year cost here. Okay, that's one thing.
So means that like we need to think about our end game, right? If it's let's say if our end game, you have so many properties, let's say like you have like 5 to 6 properties already, or maybe more than that, right? Then you know that like your end game wise, if you want to continue to invest, you also have to think about your future. Then transferring or buying from then onwards, is buying through IHC actually might be another option, because like 5K compared to the future transferring costs, things like that, that would be even much significant.
Right. You look at the fact that the tycoons are using this type of bodies, so-called IHC to hold properties. It's something which you ask the same question: why are they doing it? If the cost is too high for them, do they want to do it? It's not. The more you buy, the lower the cost, because it won't be sort of jumping that high in terms of audit fee or tax fee in that sense. Whereas the more property you buy, the average cost will be lower, right, against your investment. So it's never too high a cost to you. And secondly, there will be people who take care of the accounts, which give you a peace of mind to go and look for more properties and invest it, so that you get expert advice in terms of your taxes and your company law and other part of law. So it's always tap into it. You are paying 100 ringgit for secretarial fee. You can ask them a lot of things about company matters, which you get. If you ask a lawyer, they'll charge you 10 times more. So they're giving you a lot of free advice, and especially for my line, I'm touching on tax and audit and secretarial and accounting. A lot of people, like now, you are getting free advice from me, which I could charge much more. So a lot of things that you can get from them by having them as your so-called professional advice. Then you pay them a bit to do that. All right.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. Then for 90%.
So there's a.
Okay, 90% quota. This issue about personal finance. Just now your example of 500, your purchase of property. Can you go back to the slide that shows the 300,000? Imagine you bought a property 300,000, and that was about let's say 10 years ago. And by the time from 10 years ago until now, if your loan, let's say it's 20 years, you already paid partly. Assuming you already paid 100,000, your net loan maybe is only balance. Let's say, assuming the balance of the loan is 150,000. Now the property has appreciated to 500,000. If you get a 60% loan out of 500,000, it's 300,000. Why not? And that 300,000, you can buy another property and settle the first property. So the interest that you obtain by having a second loan, you can offset against the rental income of the second property. there's no loss to you. You get the point? So there's in this case, refinancing at 60% is not an issue for you really, because you can get the money out and buy the next property, which you can take out 300,000. So out of 300,000 loan, you already settled your first property. You took a balance of it to buy the next property. You get what I'm trying to say?
Yep. So I think the overall idea what Mr. Chee want to say is like, in long run, right? This IHC actually like will help you to accumulate more properties, because it's like your principal is like getting reduced, right, through the payment. Then from now, even you finance at 60%, right, you are still able to cash out some of the money, and from that, like you can able to refinance and go and buy more properties again. I think that's what you mean, right, Mr. Chee?
Correct. Yeah. Then the interest will not be lost to you, right? Because you use the money for next property, unless you use the money for your own holidays overseas, or for your whatever other personal use, then it's wasted. It's always investment. So
Okay.
the strategy is going there. Okay.
So let me I think let me go through some Q&A, Mr. Chee. So Jess, okay, I just look for start from the last question first. Okay, Mr. Chee, 5,000 per year per IHC company for only one property or the few properties? I think my understanding is like it's for the company, right? Means that per IHC company, correct? It does not matter whether you have one property or 10 property or 20 properties.
Well, it still varies a bit. That means it will increase a little bit more, but minimum 5K for one property. But depending, if a property is only 200,000, definitely it's not about 5K. It will be less than 5K. Why not? Because it goes by the value of property, number one, and the so-called other things that you're doing in a company. When you have one company, just one property, depending on the value of property, 5K is the normal range to cover all the costs, which is even inclusive of the service tax to government, the filing fees, all this. It is not that much of fees to pay to the accountant in that sense. Then secondly, the 5,000, if there are a lot of ideas to implement, for example, you want to buy a property, a piece of land, how do you sort of deal with the land? You need advice on that. So there will be extra advice given to you free of charge. That's because you pay the 5,000 or 6,000 ringgit for the accountant. You get free advice on other things, which the client that he's going to buy, he used about 5 million to buy a piece of land. So my advice to him is how to structure the construction of the factory and how to plan it for tax benefit in the future. So the one, if it's not given to them, they just do it on their own, there may be a big loss in the sense that they'll be paying taxes for nothing. So that's where you get advice before you do the next step. So it's always not that high a cost to you.
Okay.
Just like a person having cold, you go and buy Panadol or from a pharmacy, but you see a doctor, the doctor charge you 25 ringgit or 30 ringgit versus the Panadol, they buy maybe 3 ringgit or 4 ringgit. So the distinction is the doctor is there to tell you more. Okay, that's all.
Yep, thanks, Mr. Chee. So I think let me answer, go to the second questions. So this question from John, okay, I think like a lot of people is also interested into this question, right? How do we get, maybe the first question is like, how do we get the loan, right? First, it's like, my understanding normally is like, when you first form the Sdn Bhd, on day one, actually like, even your IHC without any profile, actually like you can use your personal name as a guarantor for that Sdn Bhd to obtain the loan. Is this still applicable in the current market, Mr. Chee?
Well, that question should be asked the banker here. Any banker here? Well, as far as I know, yes, because your relationship with the bank officer is very important. As long as they know you well, they use your personal salary or your company background as a front for them to give you a loan. So for my case, same thing. When I formed my first company, they use myself as the director of a company and myself as a guarantor for a loan. So they're also based on your salary. So the process is the same.
Yep.
Same process. There's a percentage of loan will be different. That's all.
Yeah, so I think to answer John's questions, right? My understanding is that like that's why I think like a lot of investors like they are using IHC simply because it's that like you don't necessarily need to wait for like 3 to 5 years to build your company profile. If your personal income is strong enough, you as a director, right, you can become the guarantor of your company and to go and get the loan from the company. But again, you have to take note that for residential property, it's 60%. So that's why some of times, right, you can consider to buy commercial property. Commercial property as in not only limited to the shop lot, but you can consider Soho, that kind of like properties, you still can able to get 80 to 85% loan margin. Okay. So so I hope that we answer your questions. So then the next question is like, can the IHC property transfer back to personal name?
Sure. As I said earlier, IHC is a legal entity. It's like human being. You and your father also human beings and human beings. So that means the company can transfer to you and you can transfer back to company. There's no law to stop you from doing that. Okay, unless the title says that the land cannot be transferred to a company. But so far in Malaysia, I don't think any title will say that, unless it's only for Bumi and non-Bumi, a kind of arrangement. Otherwise, it should not be an issue. There's no hindrance on that.
And it's also subjected that you did not owe any money to the bank, right? Means that like from the company you want to transfer back to you, right? You need to make sure that okay, if let's say you still owe the company you still owe the bank like 300,000, then you make sure that like you still got 90% quota, or even if you refinance at 60%, right? Make sure that you still are able to, your financial is strong enough to transfer back to your personal name. But I think normally people would only transfer the property from personal name to IHC. I think I seldom see a scenario that like to transfer the property from company to personal name. Okay, because I think one of the biggest advantages is like we buy property using IHC. Is like at the end of the day, we sell the stake. I mean, we sell the shares or we sell the company instead of selling the whole property. Right, that is one of the way that I think we help us to save a lot of like tax. Okay, which I believe that later on in the part 2, right, of this presentation, I think that maybe Mr. Chee will share more with us. Okay. So Jensen asked the question that like, means in IHC do not need to pay inheritance tax, just transfer the share will do.
Well, Malaysia, there's no inheritance tax yet. The last time they had it before, now no more already. When will it come back? Near future come back. So at the moment, whether you have property under a personal name or under company name, the inheritance tax will be quite similar. This can go by value. So you have property under a personal name of 20 million versus the company having 20 million. You hold shares in the company that has 20 million properties. It's no difference from holding property of your own self of 20 million. So inheritance tax is based on the value. So not much of a difference.
Okay, yep. Yeah. So I think Tony has a question here. So how many properties have to be owned above, like then only you start by IHC? I think he's asking more coming from like what I said just now, is like maybe if you only have one property, maybe it's not worth, or maybe like only like maybe have to own but how many properties above, then when you look at the cost and the benefit wise, then only it's worth to go and form an IHC. I think that's a question from Tony.
Yeah, that part of the question is very taunting to a lot of people, especially the first timer. To me, same thing, even I'm an investor before. It's first time to form a company and say, is it worthwhile? Is it the way? But once you have stepped into it and your plan is to accumulate more and more, instead of thinking of selling and selling, my idea is to invest and keep for long term as a family investment holding company. So that when people retire, they can get rental income instead of working. So you are looking at long term. So always look at long term. The end in mind, as I said earlier, this Stephen Covey have been telling us, what is the end in mind? This is something which is very, very important to all of us when you come to IHC. Right? You look at long term or short term. You look at short term, I want to buy this and sell tomorrow. Then you can use a personal name because not many people can sell many houses in 1 year. You can just sell 1 or 2 or sort of thing. So as such, you can use personal name. But even you want to buy and sell houses, just like buying, like just a person selling second-hand cars, you also have a company, right? It's easier to do accounts. when it comes to selling and buying of properties, it's also easier to do accounts by a company, using a company to do it. So IHC can also come in, right, to help you to do that.
Okay, yep. So then IHC eligible to do corporate guarantor? Means that you use one company to be guarantor for another company.
Yeah, it's common. It's
yeah,
common.
I think it's common. Yeah.
You come to a stage whereby your holding company, we call it holding company against subsidiary. So holding company which holds shares in the subsidiary, 母公司、子公司啊，
Yep.
母公司跟子公司哈，所以母公司有钱的话，可以收购子公司，可以给 guarantee. So that means the mother company can give guarantee to the daughter company. In that sense, for a loan that the daughter company is taking.
Yeah, I also aware that I think there's some guru or I would say like those like crocodile. I mean the big guru. I think how they do is that like they will become IHC. They will use their own IHC to become guarantor to each other to continue to buy. Yeah, I think there are some one strategy on that part as well. Yeah. So
even look at the Berjaya Corporation Group. Look at the holding company pulling shares down and then down and down. These are all the similar kind of arrangement they are doing. So it's common. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think let's answer the last one more question here. Usually, how much we need to pay when we transfer ownership from IHC back to individual name for property each time? I think it's follow the. I think this one have to follow the.
You mean the cost incurred in transferring the property from company to personal, or personal company, right?
Company to personal. I think this one should be following the typical SPA transfer, right?
Yeah, you have the first thing, the legal fees. But my advice would be at this moment, you can form IHC to buy new properties, because the cost of transferring your own property into company will be quite high also. You have to take care of the stamp duty, the legal fees, and at the same time, RPGT involved. Now there's a 5%. So you may wait for a while until the government change to zero RPGT. Then there's a year that you can change, can transfer out again. So you can hold on for a while. Probably time will come whereby the government said, okay, can reduce the RPGT to zero again. That'd be good. So you always wait for timing. Yeah.
Okay. And then let's answer the last question, Mr. Chee. Okay, so the last question is like, is it recommended to use personal name to buy your first property because you can get higher loan margin, then later on refinance and transfer to IC? But if refinance in this way, can the loan interest still deducted to income tax for LIC?
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, to start IHC is always the question of to move forward. But a lot of people cannot make the decision. So it's all right to buy the first property or second property under personal name first, get used to it. Then in the future, you have an IHC to hold it. So you can, after buying the first property, let's say 2 years later, you can refinance the property using a company. So the company will get a loan to sort of cover the first property. But then the income tax aspect of it, there will be some implication, different arrangement. So must think about that as well.
Okay. Yep. Okay. So I think that's it for our tonight discussion. Thank you everyone. So that's why I hear that like just now what Mr. Chee sharing with us, right, is only the part 1. Okay, and we're going to have the part 2 of this section. And this part 2, stay tuned into the SCT website. Stay tuned. Like for those that who register part 1, right, I think like we also will share the date with you for part 2. Okay, and we're going to share with you that maybe most likely like in the coming weeks. Okay, so please stay tuned with us that like we're going to share the part 2 with you. But I think one of the important message that I want to share with you is that like just now, right, in the Mr. Chee section here, like I think a lot of people is asking that like you want to refinance right after a few years. In order for you to refinance after a few years, you need to make sure that you are buying the right property in order to achieve the capital appreciation, right? So that is the main thing at here. So that's why, right, a lot of the properties today, like being myself, like for example, when myself, right, one of the property that I always buying is like I need to be connecting to the job population area, which is the Tun Rasa Exchange and PNP 118. And today I'm doing all the price analysis to understand, right, all the price per square feet for all the MRT properties to choose the best thing. And for those that who are knowing me well, right, they all know that actually it's like I invest property in somewhere velocity 2, simply because it's like today, if you're looking at here, right, property, just now then you see some videos about Tun Rasa Exchange. Tun Rasa Exchange is going to be the upcoming game changer and financial district. And you can see that property in TRX is selling at 2,000 per square feet. And today, Maluri area being the closest to Tun Rasa Exchange, right, there's still a price gap. As an investor, at least for myself, right, I never invest, let's say like when KL Central boom up, normally I won't invest in KL Central. I will go and buy places that being nearest to KL Central. That's why when KL Central is so expensive, Bangsa boom up. When Bangsa is so expensive, Bangsa South boom up. So that's why from my perspective, when I look at here, Maluri, right, actually is one of the Sun Velocity 2, okay, looking at the location itself, right, it's being the closest integrated development to this Tun Rasa Exchange. And you can see from here again, MRT line 1 here, people that were working in TRX, right, they won't go to this direction because it's like you can see that Bukit Bintang, Merdeka, KL Central, Damansara Heights, if go through all these MRT line, they are minimum selling at 1,000 per square feet and above. So that's why people that like who are working in TRS, definitely they won't go to the left, but they will go to the right, which is like at here you can see that Summer Velocity actually is one of the closest integrated development with 3 MRT line and 2 LRT line connecting to TRX, KLCC, Bukit Bintang, PNP 118. And I strongly believe that this would achieve your capital appreciation in the long run. So if your end in mind is that like you want to continue to invest in property, you need to make sure that like you can get the capital appreciation, then IHC actually would be one of the good strategy, right, to help you to sustain your investment and also like all the benefit that as mentioned by Mr. Chee. Okay, that's why being myself, right, myself actually like I'm also proud to be a Velocity 2 owner. I'm a Block A owner. During back in 2019 when it's launching, right, it's like Pasar, you know, it's like when they do the launching during that time, COVID is not breakthrough yet. So I think I'm somewhere here. Then after that, it's like we all buying this property. It's like we need to go and like have a big long queue to go and choose this property. So today, if you are interested to understand more about this Somewhere Velocity 2, okay, so you can like screenshot. I think the SCT team, right, they already put the link here. If you are interested to understand more about Somewhere Velocity 2, you think that like this one will be if you want to understand how this thing could achieve your long-term capital appreciation, you can click the link or you can use your phone to screenshot it, scan the QR code. Then I think our team actually will share more with you about the opportunities, the capital appreciation opportunities, the cash flow for Summer Velocity 2. And if you are interested to form an IHC, right, if let's say you're already a seasoned investor, you want to know more about how to form IHC, I strongly advise you to engage with Mr. Chee. Okay, so this is another link, the right-hand side. This is the link. Okay, you can click this link and talk to Mr. Chee or Mr. Chee team. I'm sure that like his team will be able to help you, okay, to fulfill your long-term property investment goal. Okay, so I think that's it for tonight's presentation. Thank you, everyone. So at the end of this section now, I think I will play a quick video. After this video, I think we will officially end our tonight section. Okay. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you, everyone. Good night, everyone. Bye bye.